Hello, my name is Gabby Richardson, and you are listening to The Nexus of Narratives, where we use stories to bring people together across belief systems. New episodes are released every Monday on your favorite podcast platform, where I have a conversation with a guest about an obstacle that they faced in their life that invited them to take a look at their own beliefs, whether about themselves or about the world around them. We talk about how those beliefs were formed and how formative moments shape how we interact with the world. The Nexus of Narratives is what we will uncover through this story exploration. It's the common thread that unites all of us, no matter what our beliefs are. And if you're an avid podcast listener, you know the deal. Please take a moment on the platform where you are listening to follow, rate, and review. Those little acts go a long way in ensuring that this important work reaches more people. Take a look at the show notes for information on this episode, how to connect with today's guest, and any content warnings. So if there's anything that you want to be aware of, that's the place to find it. So without any further delay, I look forward to sharing this story with you, and I'll see you again here on your feed next Monday or sooner on Patreon. Hello, and welcome to the Nexus of Narratives. Amy, I'm so grateful to share space with you. Thank you for sharing some time with me today.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure getting to know you.
Yeah, likewise. And so for those who are listening for the first time, would you share a little bit about yourself so that people can get to know you a little bit?
Well, I'm recently a published author, and I bought a 10-acre reforested farm that I'm creating a retreat. And that's what I'm doing now. But where I came from is actually very much the opposite of where I am today, which is part of the reason why I'm here. So I grew up right outside of Washington, D.C. in Rockville. It was very multicultural. I knew somebody from pretty much every country, every religion, every kind of background, and socioeconomic status. And when I was a little kid, I didn't know the difference. I just thought that was the way life was. I mean, which is what I think most kids think. And then for college, I went an hour away up to Baltimore, which is, even though it was an hour away, it was a universe away because it's set up very differently than the Washington metropolitan area. And I was kind of in like anti-culture shock. And I thought, how come you guys don't eat good food? And how come you listen to all the same music? And why don't you know how to dance? And then I got 2 degrees in 4 years, and I was on my way to be a doctor. And then I got married and had a baby, and I changed my plans, and I lived in Hawaii for a little over a year, and I lived outside of Atlanta for 4 years, which drastically changed my point of view of where I grew up, because I didn't know this as a kid, but I had so much opportunity to go in a million directions. And that is probably the biggest thing about your geography, is the opportunities that you're afforded and who you know and how you can get there. And so when I went back to Maryland, and I had 2 kids by then, I had to figure out how to raise them, and I had to raise them in a culture that didn't quite agree with my perspective of life. And so I did my best to raise my children as children, not like I have a daughter and I have a son. I loved both of my children equally, and I gave them all the opportunities that I could without labeling things, and their friends were their friends without labeling things. And we spent a lot of time in nature. Although, like, as far as school was concerned, they were very high in academics and athletics and music and art and everything. But when we had free time, we were out in nature. And I brought their friends along. And it was really cool because I don't know if other people know this, but children don't really act up in nature. And if they do, you just simply walk away from them, and then they stop whatever they're doing because they don't want to be left behind. But I taught them how to navigate their way through. I taught them how to listen to the sounds and pay attention to the animals and follow the paths and follow their intuition. And now that they're adults, they are absolutely immersed in nature. And my son lives in Hawaii and my daughter lives in Oregon. And that was one of the biggest lessons I taught them is when you graduate from high school, you need to go away. I said, go away for 5 to 10 years. If you somehow decide you want to come back, then come back, but go experience the world and then decide where you belong. Because if you don't go away, then you never know anything different. And I wasn't really given those opportunities. I was kind of encouraged to stay close. And it kind of went against the grain to go far. So I went far because I knew that's what I needed to do. I needed to broaden my perspective. So not just broaden it, but heighten it. To learn as much as I could about the wisdom of every culture that I could, and the life lessons from people and the land and the animals and all the different places that I've traveled. And once they did graduate from from high school and go to college, I told them, like, hey, I'm out of here. And then they did that. And I thought, well, now, oh gosh, I have to actually own up to what I said. And I was like, well, damn me. And actually my birthday was right before COVID shut down the world. And everybody was happy and healthy and we were doing our thing. And 3 days later, COVID said, like, oh, nope, sorry, all your plans are canceled. Because I was about to start a brand new job. And then I was like, well, what do I do now? And so I think within a month or so, I said, well, I guess I'm going to move now. And I started to pack up my house and I cleaned everything. And a few months later, I sold my house and I moved to North Carolina. And my goal to come here is it's the coastal part of North Carolina. And I wanted to be much more immersed in nature. I wanted to get away from the big cities and the hour commute to work and the, 10 to 12-hour days sometimes at work. Because even though I was successful at my job, it was slowly like eating away my soul. And I did what I needed to do to raise my children. I had enough money for, the house and the cars and the computers and the sports. Good God. And they can eat you. Your bank account becomes a funnel for their stomachs and you just keep feeding them and all of their friends. And so I did what I needed to do to be a good mommy. And then I left. And I still help them out a little bit when they need it because they're still in school, they're still learning, they're still doing their thing, but they have put travel and nature and adventure and life experiences into like beyond their book learning, which I think is very incredible. And that's kind of what I've done now, is because when I came down here, I found myself being surrounded by the same culture. Like, you got to work all day to make other people wealthy, other people successful. And I didn't want to do that anymore. I was like, I just want to be happy. I just want to do what makes me happy, what makes me feel comfortable inside, what makes me like help other people. Because I love to help other people. And it was very difficult to, let me go back a second. It was very easy to detach and it was very difficult to detach. It was easy to detach because I really wanted to, but it was difficult because I missed all of the benefits of that lifestyle. You know, the money and the cars and the restaurants and the theater and, you know, like cool out adventures that cost all that money. Like, in order to get away from that, you have to leave it in order to start new. Because if your life is all the way filled up, there's no space for new stuff. So you got to unfill it and refill it again.
So along all of this transition, what would you say were some of those different moments along the way that you really started to take a look at your own beliefs, and like, what were some of those beliefs that you had about maybe yourself or the world around you that you came face to face with throughout this journey?
Well, I had anxiety. I've always had anxiety, which is probably not the right word to call it now that I know more. But back then I called it anxiety and fear, which is not unlike anybody else, but I hid it. You know, it was like work hard, play hard, do what you need to do, you know, like slept 4 hours a night, felt great about it. And that's really awesome when you're young and you're running all around and you're doing things and you got, you know, business, work and school and children and all that stuff. But after 3 car accidents and a major respiratory illness, sleeping 4 hours a night was not in any way healthy or conducive to my lifestyle. And the first car accident, I had traumatic brain injury. And it completely humbled me because I went from having an impeccable memory and impeccable work ethic to, I hope I can remember what to buy at the grocery store. And I hope I can remember my mom's phone number in case I need to call her. You know, going from playing sports playing and coaching sports 4 or 5 days a week and hiking 20 to 30 miles to like, I hope I can get from my door to my car without falling down was traumatic. Like, it was scary. Like, I was like, am I ever going to be okay again? And I was only in my 30s. And I thought, how do I function like this? I'm, you know, my most of my family, my genetics lived to like 80s and 90s. And I was like, I can't live another 50 years without being able to read 3 sentences and remember what I'm reading, or go to the grocery store and buy bread, milk, and eggs because I got lost in the grocery store. So I taught myself how to recoup from that. And it took about 5 years. And 5 years later, I was in a second car accident. And that's when the PTSD set in, because all of those old pains, all of those old fears just blasted me. And my entire body was black and blue and green and purple. I mean, like, sneezing was excruciating. A hiccup would knock me out. And I didn't want to live. Like, I thought God was punishing me because I had left my marriage. I thought that, you know, like, I was being punished by God because I didn't somehow save my husband from the darkness. And it was really hard. And so for 5 years in between those accidents, I experienced pain all day, every day, that I hid from everybody. And there wasn't one day that I prayed to God, like, please just take me away. I didn't want to kill myself. That's totally different. I wanted God to make the pain to stop. But I couldn't, because I had 2 little babies that were now teenagers that needed me, you know, and they were my lifelines of hope. I know you're not supposed to, sometimes people define hope as like, you're wishing for something. Like, well, I didn't wish to win the lottery. I didn't wish for a brand new car. I didn't wish to, for whatever. I wished to raise my children and love them the best that I could, which didn't mean to go. And so I remember the day that I was almost in an accident. There was a 40-car pileup, and I was one of 2 cars that didn't get crushed. And I pulled off the road. I bawled my eyes out, and I said, please, God, I want to live. And in that same time period is when I was going to acupuncture because regular medicine and doctors wasn't helping me. And my acupuncture lady took 12 of us to Peru to work with a shaman to resolve our issues on the inside.
Amazing. So what was that like then coming out of it? Is I can't fathom what it was like to experience, especially like me right now in my 30s, able-bodied. I have a toddler. I'm an athlete. Like, my independence is huge for me.
And take it all away tomorrow. Instantly.
Like that. I cannot imagine. So,
I couldn't even read a sentence and remember it. I had to work my way up. I'd read 1 sentence, 3 sentences, a paragraph, a page. And it took me months to be able to remember anything that I had written or spoken.
Yeah. And because I think of right after I had my daughter, and it was like 2 weeks that they said, don't walk too much. And I was like a golden retriever after. I was like, please, can we go walk a little bit further? Please, honey. Like when the first time we went outside and he was carrying the baby, I want to walk further, please. Like, so I can't even fathom it. It's not anything that I could even compare. I mean, I was losing my mind after 2 weeks. And so when you were coming out of this, so you go to work on healing and overcoming through some methods that are traditional in different cultures, but not to our American culture necessarily. And so what was that experience like, whether when you were in it or as you were coming out of it, and sort of how did that transform you? Don't go anywhere just yet. We will be back with this conversation in just a moment. Thank you so much for spending your time with me here on The Nexus of Narratives. As you may know by now, it goes a long way to support the podcast by listening, following, rating, and reviewing. So if you have enjoyed the content, please take a moment to support extending the reach of this important work. While the public episodes of The Nexus of Narratives focus on the stories of our guests, how belief systems have been formed, and how to build connection, we keep the conversation going on Patreon. We've built a phenomenal community of peer connectors on Patreon who are looking to build a more compassionate world together. While I could be continuing the conversation with a guest or digesting fantastic themes with my dear friend Rowan, there is a lot of great bonus content on Patreon, including additional benefits for different tiers. Search Nexus of Narratives on Patreon or click the link in the show notes to join this exclusive community. I look forward to connecting with you there. For more information on the Nexus of Narratives, ways to listen, opportunities to connect with me, or share a story of your own, go to nexusofnarratives.org. I personally monitor that inbox, so it is a quick and simple way to connect directly with me. Whether you're a new listener or have been around for a while, I'm deeply grateful for your time and commitment to this work. Without keeping you any longer, let's get back to the story.
Well, when I went to Peru for 3 weeks and I met a shaman, and he was the real deal. He was probably around 70, and he had been in shamanic training as part of his family since he was 12 years old. And so that was his way of life. He didn't like read it in a book or go to some retreat or drink ayahuasca and somehow become enlightened. It was who he was. And his family had lived in Peru for multiple generations. And what they did is at the age of, 12 or 13, like most religions, they sent one person into Catholicism and one person into shamanic training. And it didn't matter if it was a boy or a girl. It could be either one to either side. And his grandmother had been a shaman, and he was the one chosen. And his sister actually went into the Catholic Church. But that's not necessarily the tradition. It was just I guess they feel out who is going to be more receptive and open to that type of learning, because their families integrated old and new, ancient and modern. And his son, he had two kids, and one was actually a medical doctor, and one was a lawyer. And he had his doctorate in archaeology. So when we were down there, he took us around to all the archaeological sites, and he told us the spiritual significance behind all of it, as well as the archaeological. So I don't actually know what textbooks say about all of this stuff. I know what I know from my experience. And it changed me. And although we had several ceremonies down there, when I came back, I still had all of the same physical and emotional impairments that I did before there. And I was mad. I was like, oh, I did all of this work. I mean, I prepared for 6 months. I went down there. I worked for 3 weeks. I learned all kinds of really cool stuff. And I wasn't fixed. And I was frustrated, and I thought, well, it must be me. And then 3 months later, he was coming up to Maryland, where I was, and they were like, well, do you want to come? And I was like, well, okay, sure. So in order to get this big ball of PTSD, anxiety, depression, yucky nastiness out of me, I thought, well, that didn't used to be in me, and now it's in me. So how do I take it out of me? So I wanted to find the origin of my fear. And I didn't know what that was. And I always assumed it was my father. My father was very brilliant, and he had all the right intentions in the world. But we just never got along. We never saw eye to eye. We always had a contentious relationship. And I just automatically assumed it was him. And so what you learn in ceremony is you learn how to meditate, which was always hard for me, never sitting still, moving around constantly. So I was like, well, okay, I'm just going to go hike 10 miles. And then I can sit down. Yay, me, and so I was sitting there, and I drank the medicine, and it was the first time when I was able to actually meditate before my healing. And I sat there, I closed my eyes, and it was kind of like one of those movies, like where the pictures are coming towards you. And all of the pictures coming towards me, like in 3D, were people who have caused me fear. So there's the first picture, and I'm like, no, you're not it. No, you're not it. No, you're not it. And these aren't people that I might have known, I might have not known. Maybe it was somebody who almost, drove by me for a split second. And everything started to go faster, and it went faster and faster. And I got all the way to the end of the photograph card looking things. And it was my grandmother, who passed away when I was 6 years old. And just so the listeners understand, is that I was one of 4 girls. My mom and dad worked full time, and my grandmother raised me. My sisters were 6 and 8 years older than me. So they were gone. They were out of the house. They were in school, and it was me and my grandma every day. So when she passed away at 6 years old, it was more like losing your parent rather than your grandmother, because she was with us. and she passed from cancer. So when I got to that last card and figured out that she was the origin of my fear, I said, and I think I said it out loud, which is kind of rude in the ceremony. I said, "Oh, it's you?" And she looked and she kind of reverently put her head down and said, "Yes, don't be afraid anymore." And my whole body felt different. And I thought, well, okay, all right, this is what I'm supposed to do. And then when Teo, my shaman, called me up for my own personal healing, we spoke without words. It was kind of like when you can hear somebody's thoughts that you have a deep connection with. And I believe he was speaking in Quechua, which is the native language of Peru, which I don't know. And but I understood him and he understood me, and we spoke without words. And then he said out loud, "Tell me about your grandmother." And I said, "She told me not to be afraid anymore." And so much negative energy like left my body, and I kind of felt like a wet noodle. And I kind of just like went down, and they were like rubbing my back. They were like, "Okay, you can purge now." And I was like, "Well, I've got nothing." And so I thought I was somehow deficient. I was like, "I can't purge. I don't know what I'm supposed to do." And so I'm just sitting there, and they said, "Oh, it's okay." So I just went like, literally like that. That was all I could muster up. I was so lame. And then when I went back to my seat, and I saw who I thought was the lady who did acupuncture for me, who goes, her spiritual name is Radiant Hawk, so I can call her Radiant Hawk. I thought she had moved over in front of the bathroom, and I had to go to the bathroom so bad, and I was like, I don't even know if you're allowed to go to the bathroom during this stuff, like this isn't my realm of knowledge. And she had this really pretty shawl on her that she always wears. And I was like, well, I can't go to the bathroom. I'll interrupt her. And then I saw this other figure, and it looks like he had a tall headdress on. And I was like, oh gosh, my imagination is awesome. And so the next morning when we all got together and we were processing the ceremony, other people described what was in my imagination. And I'm like, hello, people, but out of my imagination, this is mine, not yours. And out of the 12 people in the group, I would say 5 people saw the same 3 people that I saw, which are whatever word people would choose to use. If they're an entity, if it's a spirit, if it's I call them spirits. But I just assumed it was my imagination, but it's physically impossible for 5 other people to describe exactly what I saw, which means it's not my imagination. But I didn't speak because I was still new to this whole experience of other realms. And so a couple of weeks later, I went to acupuncture, and I just said, like, hey, like, did you switch your seat from the front over near the bathroom? And she said, no. And I was like, well, but I saw you with your shawl, and it was pretty, and you had your hand out to the side. And she said, no, that was Teo's grandmother. She came to help. And I just had this weird tingly sensation all over me. So Teo's grandmother came to help me speak to my grandmother in ceremony. And the whole message was to stop being afraid.
Wow. Wow. Spiritual stuff always gets me.
Yeah.
Like, especially now that I'm kind of like figuring out my own experience inside of that.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So I want to ask, because I think this will naturally carry the rest of your story of how it's transformed you is ask you the same questions that I ask everyone who joins the Nexus of Narratives, despite the fact that I want to just talk about this with you forever.
Well, I have 7 more years of it, so feel free.
We'll have to do a part 2.
Okay.
So for anyone who's listening that can relate to anywhere that you've been in any part of your story, how can your story create connection for people who have similar experiences and similar beliefs?
Well, the way I feel, I was in a very dark space. So not only was I having physical pain and emotional pain, I was having spiritual pain. And I didn't trust anybody to tell them. I kept it a secret. I kept all of my deficiencies as secret as I could. And I held the pain inside. And that's the worst thing to do. But you also don't want to go all the way on the other side of the spectrum and go around burdening everybody, like, and telling everybody every day, hey, guess how much pain I'm in? Hey, guess how, yeah, because like you're not going to have very many friends that way. But when you find those few trusted people that you can rely on to love you for who you are, love you through the good and love you through the bad, love you when you're talking, but most likely love you when you're being silent. Because when you're in those moments, when you're in those spaces, you don't want somebody to come in and try and fix you and be like, hi, I'm a knight in shining armor and I'm going to come in and fix everything. And you also don't want somebody when you're down in that little dark holes, like throwing food down to you, like, here you go, like that's a hand out keeps you down. A hand up, or a hand up out of that hole, or somebody crawling down in there and just sitting with you peacefully and go like, you know what, I'm here with you until you're ready. Go for a walk, open the door, like go get something to eat, have a cup of tea, like have a glass of wine, do whatever you do to create the right companions that will love you for who you are and love you through all of your experiences. And I'm not going to say it's all like fun and roses and, everything's wonderful and they're going to agree with you, but they're going to be there for you. And when you're having a great day, they're going to say, hey, everything's great. And when you're having a bad day, they're going to go like, do you want my help or you just want me here? You just want to feel my presence. You want to feel my love. And allow that other person to answer however they answer, because everybody you don't need words for everything. You need feelings, you need emotions, and you need to have enough trust in yourself and in that other person to read their feelings through your intuition, I guess.
That's lovely. Yeah. And I feel like you've already answered this, but just to ask and keep the same treatment that I give everyone.
Okay.
Is if there's someone who's in a relatable place to where you were at any point in your story, what might you say to a past version of yourself?
I would tell them to love themselves, love the worst part of yourself, which is actually what my whole next book is about. Is how to fall in love and stay in love with the worst parts of yourself, because it's ultimately what makes you you and helps you find your purpose. So yeah, I had that big ball of stress and anxiety inside of my stomach, and I focused on what was wrong with me. And a couple of years ago when I was down here and I was hiking near the river and I was finding fossils that were 35 million years old, the metaphor for the tides changing, you can hear the tide changing. And when I learned to listen to the tides, to be down there walking through nature and having it safe, is when the shift happened inside of me. Like I like fell in love with that little girl that was filled with curiosity and awe. And I was like, I am down here by myself, finding fossils, sticking them in my backpack, walking back home, cleaning them and identifying them. And most people were like, Amy, they're rocks. And I'm like, but they're my rocks, you know? And I thought, wow, I still have them and they're really cool. And I did that for probably about 3 months. And when I completely opened myself up to loving all of myself, that's when everything in my life started to change. And people who genuinely love me for me found me. We found each other. And I love them for them, and they love me for me. And together, we're working on creating something much bigger than ourselves.
That's gorgeous.
Thank you.
And what do or did you need to feel most connected to the people around you?
I'm a little quirky, in case you didn't notice. And I just needed them to understand me. They don't have to agree with me. They just need to understand me. You know, when I like talk to the animals in nature and have little conversations with trees, and I'm creating nature trails with my little loppers in the middle of the forest. I've never done these things before, and I'm doing them. And I don't exactly know why or how I'm doing things. The answers come to me. And so if you come to me on like Tuesday and you want 10 answers, I don't have 10 answers on Tuesday, because the answers come to me as I allow them to come to me. And that's not always the easiest kind of person to work with. Most people go like, we want to do ABC and we need to get to those things right now. And this is how we're going to do it. And I'm like, let me think about it. Let me feel it. Like, let me figure it out. And the people who are around me, whether they agree with me or not, we have a mutual understanding, and I respect them for how they do their work, and they respect me. And it's been absolutely beautiful. I have 3 main people in my life, and together, excluding my children, my children are my children, but 3 main people that I have met within the last 2 years since I opened myself up to the universe, for lack of a better word. I don't want to sound corny. But when I opened myself up, we found each other, because they need me for certain reasons and I need them for certain reasons. And we have a similar outlook to how we think we're going to help the world be a better place.
I love that so much. Yeah, I'm like, I don't even feel like I need to respond to any of these, just because they're great as they are. They don't need me.
You want to come visit. I know you do.
And last but not least, if there's anyone listening that's like, oh my goodness, I don't agree with a single thing she's saying, I think this lady has lost her mind. How can your story create connection for people who have different beliefs and different experiences?
Well, you know, saying I'm crazy you're not the first person to point that out. So, but you know, I own my crazy. I love my crazy. I wouldn't be me without it. And that's cool, because I'm me. And that is what people need to figure out. You don't have to be me. You don't have to agree with me. You don't even have to like any of the words that I use. And that's actually what I say in the beginning of my book is, this is my life. These are my experiences. And these are the words that I found to say this to you. But if you don't like my words, go find your own. You need to be you 100% of the time. And don't let other people tell you who you're supposed to be. Don't let books tell you how you're supposed to be, or philosophies or theories. You can read a million books, but that's not going to tell you who you are. The only way you're going to find out who you are is by looking inside, because every person has all of the answers they already need inside of them. I didn't give it to them. No other person or book or resource is going to give it to them. It's their connection with whatever word they use to describe God. So if you want to call it love or light or energy or power or the universe, you pick out your word and you be the best version of yourself every day. And that's where you'll find love.
Lovely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Nothing to add to that. And
you're like, yay, mommy power.
I was like, this is amazing. It's fantastic. And that's part of my growth in my work too, is like, I don't necessarily need to respond to validate it. I'm like, it's great as it is. It's wonderful. It's great. And it's powerful.
Well,
so thank you.
Of the best things is I've always had this philosophy in some way, shape, or form in my mind, which is what I said to my kids. And I think part of their growing up was kind of rough, because they were like, well, I want to be who I want to be, which doesn't always fit in. You know, when your son wants to cook dinner and your daughter wants to play in the dirt, you know, their friends are like, you're weird. And I'm like, we're all weird. You know, like, who wants to be normal? I mean, I don't even know what normal is.
I was just thinking that. I'm like, what is normal anyways?
I think
someone made up somewhere along the way.
Well, Ken and I decided the other night that anybody who thinks they're normal is actually abnormal.
Yeah, I agree.
And all of us weird people are the normal ones.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. Well, this has been absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for your time and your vulnerability and your openness. And I love your laugh. And I think this has been wonderful. And I think I can talk to you forever, but for the sake of everyone else listening, maybe we'll save it for another time. So for anyone who's listening and would like to learn more about your book, purchase it, get in touch with you. We'll have information in the show notes, but also how can they find you?
Well, my website is up and running, but I'm actually doing an overhaul of it. So if they go on to whiteheron.us, it is there, but probably in about a month or so, there'll be a whole brand new whiteheron.us. But they can also find my book, White Heron, A Creation Story, on Amazon. And the workbook that goes with it, and the next book that I'm writing, Alexander, Unearthing an Immortal Love Story, about how you fall in love with yourself. It's much more poetic, and it has a lot of wisdom that I've learned in there. So if they keep in touch with my website, the old version and the new version, then they'll be able to figure it all out. Or they can stop by my retreat and honeybee farm and get some honey and go into my little room and feel the oscillating bees and the smell and the heat and have a whole bunch of natural healing.
That's amazing. I love it. Well, thank you again. So incredible. And I look forward to a future conversation with you.
Thanks.
Wow, what a tremendous conversation that was. So thank you for taking the time to listen, and I hope you were able to find just as many nuggets of wisdom as well as actionable steps to build connections in the spaces all around you. This is an extremely grassroots production, so thank you to my dear friend Rowan for their commitment to this work by posting on social media and leading fantastic conversations with me on Patreon. So be sure to join that community on Patreon and enjoy the additional content. And thank you, of course, to my sweet and talented husband, DJ, for creating the music that is used in this podcast. Now, let's go out and create some connection in this world.
Check it out.